What's going on, everybody? Hope you're having a fantastic Wednesday and everyone is figuring things out in their cash practice this week. I know it's a weird part of the year with summer and kind of some slow periods with the holidays, but I hope that things are going really well for you, both in business and in life. Today, I have a really exciting training here with you all today that we've been talking about for the last few days. We've gotten a ton of excitement around. What we have is we have Marci here, who's been working with us for the last, I'd say about 3.5, 4 months, you'd say?
Yeah.
And she's been an absolute pleasure to work with. And she's grown not just in her patient population, but grown so much as an individual and as a business owner and what it takes to lead a team, what it takes to build a scalable practice. And I thought it would be such a refreshing story to share inside of this community, just because everyone sees all these stories of everyone who just overnight is this massive success. And that's definitely not my story. That's not Ben's story. And that's not the story of the majority of people. And Marci, I think, is just a really inspiring story of someone who's persevered through stuff, who's tried a lot of things and has started to find some things that work. So I'm excited for her to be here and to share her knowledge with all of you here today. So make sure everyone say thank you. If you're here live, comment live. If you're catching replay, comment replay. But Marci, welcome to the Cash Physical Therapy Headquarters Facebook group.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Of course. I always like to start this thing off just to, people see the results and hear the stories, but I always like to start off by humanizing people a little bit to bring them down and to everyone else's level. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, your practice, who you help, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I live in the Bay Area. But I'm originally from New York. I was a travel physical therapist, and that's what brought me out here. And I just fell in love with the Bay Area. It was just my home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's what brought me out here. And I was a neurotherapist for a really long time, which I absolutely loved. And then I had my son 11 years ago, and I didn't want to do neuro anymore. So I went to outpatient orthopedics and had my own issues and recovery and from childbirth. And I just started studying women's health and just fell in love with that. So I was working in orthopedics and I was doing women's health. And then that took me to doing really going deep into pelvic floor. And I just never looked back after that. When I realized what an underserved population it was, I became really passionate about that. And then I opened up my own practice about 4 years ago. I just was done working in an insurance-based setting and just really wanted to be on my own. Lots of reasons went into that. So I've had my own practice I'm on year 4 of my own practice.
That's amazing. How's it feel to be 4 years in already?
It feels amazing. Yeah, it's just been a journey. I just feel like it's a journey. There's so much personal growth that has to happen for me to have done all this, and still more personal growth to come. So it's hard, but I enjoy it. I'm really glad I did it. I definitely never look back.
Yeah. And once you're this deep, you can never do anything ever again. It has to be some form of entrepreneurship. It's definitely the most addicting game ever once you get over that initial hump. And so I do want to obviously talk about where you're at today and the things that you're doing, but I want to learn a little bit more about your story. So when you started, was it this situation where you're I already know I'm going to do this, and you just jumped in right away, or is it something that terrified you? Tell us about the transition.
Oh, it terrified me. I think it was one of the scariest things I've ever done, leaving that solid job and the regular paycheck and walking away from that and feeling people are going to pay money to see me, cash. They're going to pay cash to see me. And it was hard. And I didn't fully dive in right away. I kind of warmed up and I did home health on the side. But that actually, I reached a point, I did that for maybe a year because the pandemic hit. And I was saying to my husband, I hate home health. I don't enjoy it. And I could tell that it's stopping me from putting the full momentum into growing my own practice. So then COVID happened and that forced me to stop doing home health. So then I just had my practice. I was homeschooling my kids, and my goal was to just keep the practice alive through COVID. So I did that. It was I had a nanny. I'd go in the garage, see a client, come back, do homework. I just was I just want to keep this thing alive was my goal. And then I finally got vaccinated and then went back into the clinic, and I wanted to work 2 days a week, but I had enough patients to support 3 days a week. So I didn't want to stop the momentum. So I went back 3 days a week, and I've been working 3 days a week, seeing patients, sometimes 4, but I try to keep it to 3 days a week, seeing patients.
That's beautiful. And the other 2 days?
Admin stuff, growing the practice, block time to work on all the other things, self-care, doctor's appointments, picking up my kids, going to their events, just freedom.
I am so happy that you share that, because I think there's so much, hype around just how much you work out there and that you need to hustle your face off. off. And I mean, you've been in our community long enough. It's like, that's not what we think life is about. It's not what you should be about. And you can help so many more people when you're well rested, you know? So I'm glad that you're taking the time to do that. So it was COVID. That was the catalyst that kind of pushed you over the edge to start this thing.
I was already doing it, but it was the catalyst for me to fully commit.
Got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
I had to. I was saying I have to just only do this. And then COVID happened. And I was like, well, there you go.
Excellent. And so how did things start out for you? Like, what did things pick up pretty quick? I know pelvic health is obviously very underserved population. How'd it go?
It was very slow though. I wouldn't say it picked up really quick. I was like renting space out of a friend's cottage at the time. Like I didn't have a place to see people. And I realized I didn't like love women's health, because I don't like driving. I hate driving. And I was like, driving all the different people. And I was like, no, I need a physical space, but I wasn't yet ready to like do rent, like pay rent for a regular place, because I didn't have the clients to support it. So I was using a friend's cottage. So that was sweet. That was interesting. And it was just like word of mouth, social media, all that stuff. I didn't do any kind of ads or anything, and it just grew organically. So that's why I had some patients, and then I had the home health, and then eventually patients picked up and dropped the home health. But I do think that if I just went for it, I would have built it up quicker. I think that's part of the why it was slow in the beginning.
Yeah, I think everyone has to go through that development cycle a little bit, where they do things the hard manual way for them to be able to kind of like master that, and then appreciate some of the other things that you can do to start scaling things out. So how long were you doing things like very manually? Like initially it sounds like you did some networking, kind of did things that way. How long were you doing that for?
A long time.
Yeah.
Years. When you manually, you mean like in-person networking with people in the community, stuff like that?
Yeah. I suppose like when did you like start thinking about running ads? When did you start focusing on the digital marketing stuff?
Not until I joined your group.
Okay. Nice.
I once attempted Facebook ads for a workshop, and it was like, I didn't know anything about how I'll just figure out an ad. Like, no, that's not how it works. Like that did not work. So no, I didn't. And I always knew that I needed to scale, and I needed to get like a really good CRM, but I was scared and like afraid of the tech associated with that. I knew I wanted to use something like Go High Level, but it wasn't until I joined this group that I felt like I would have the support to learn that.
And so now you've hit some 20K months. We've had some setbacks. I want to get into like what some of those setbacks were, but before you joined our program, like where were you sitting around in terms of just like patient volume and numbers, and how long were you kind of coasting around there?
Where was I sitting in terms of patient volume when I joined the program? I was seeing about 15 patients a week and out about 2 weeks. And then I had another physical therapist, and we were building up her schedule, and we were always trying to get her to like 14 patients a week, and cancels were a problem, and just took time to build that schedule. It probably averaged about 8 and then going towards 10 or 12 or so. The whole process was slow. There were patient cancels, there was a problem. I didn't do the things we do now. Now, like I always was like, I need to have an onboard sequence, like I need to have them know, like, and trust me. Like I heard these things, but I like didn't know exactly what I needed to do to make that happen,
And so was the motivation for jumping in and working with us, was that just purely to fill your team's schedule, or what were the motivations that made you want to link arms with us?
It was to fill the team schedule. Yes. And I knew I needed to learn systems, and I knew I needed like a CRM to use, and it was to learn sales. And I had done other coaching programs, and I had been like following you guys for quite a while, and I just felt that this would be the right match for me. But you don't really know until you start doing it, but now that I'm 4 months in, I feel like you're never going to get rid of me. Like I'm just never going to stop. I just love it here.
I appreciate that. So, and we don't want to get rid of you. You were a ton of fun to hang out with at the live event, and you're a pleasure to work with. And so you're a light on all the Zoom calls that we have. So glad that you won't be going anywhere. So when you did join the systems part, like everyone hears like, I need systems, I need processes, but very few people can even like tell me what those are. So how were you operating before that made you feel feel like this is chaos? I need something a little bit smoother, more consistent.
I always wanted to give the patient a new patient sequence. I always felt like I booked the patient and then it never quite felt right. It was like they got their evaluation forms and then I had the EMR and it gave them the text reminders. And you do that and you're like, cool, they're going to get text reminders.
Yeah.
And then you're getting this intuition, this inkling, like they need more though. And like, sure, when you know something in your gut and then later it's proven, but you always knew it in your gut, so then like later, like I learned from you guys, like, yeah, there's this thing like stages of, I forget what you call it, like stages of a sale. And basically they're all going to get buyer's remorse. And that's why they need a new patient sequence to kind of warm them up and give them more content. And so I just was like knowing in my gut that there's things that need to really be improved, to improve patient retention and decrease sales, and just for me to be a better business owner and really set a solid foundation so that I can scale the way I want to.
Yeah, totally makes sense. It's like, you don't have to know exactly what the like premium version is to know that you have like the most base version of it. You know it when you see it. You might not necessarily know what it is in the moment, but I think a lot of people can resonate with that. So once you joined, how quickly did things start to change? Like, what were the biggest takeaways initially?
When I joined, it was a big commitment of time. And so it wasn't until I was a few weeks in that I realized I need to really buckle down and like do the work. It's not like it's all done for me. And so I started, it was like a month in, I'm like kind of embarrassed to say. And I was like, I am going to go to every single call on Wednesday and I'm going to go to every single call on Friday and like learn systems and learn sales. And I would come out and be like, oh my God, like I learned so much in that hour, like so actionable, like go to the clinic and be like, use this sales language for an objection and boom, like it just started working. And I was like, yeah, you get out what you put in, like that's how it works.
Yeah.
So it started really like, then the ball started rolling and I was like learning and having fun with it. And that's when it started changing.
Yeah. So would you say that the sales element has been your favorite part so far?
I think I would. Yeah. Because I felt in my gut, like I had learned about sales and people had talked to me about sales and I'd given sales scripts. So it was like, why don't I feel that I'm like really solid? I didn't feel like I was really solid. And I was thinking about this like an analogy. It's kind of like, so I'm a physical therapist. You go to physical therapy school, but clearly you're not ready to be a physical therapist. Like you have to do clinical internships. Like that's where you put the pedal to the metal and you like actually practice with someone giving you feedback. And like any physical therapist can say like, yeah, like I didn't actually learn anything until I went to my clinicals. Right. So like, I feel like that's what you guys do for sales. It was like, I've been taught about sales, but I never like, maybe I role played like a little, but to go to a sales call and like talk to AJ and listen to him review calls and like, you always think after a sales call, how did that go bad? What did I say? I think I said this, but no, the call was recorded. You're going to listen to it and you're going to stop and right there, practice what you could have said. It's like, that was genius. Like none of my other coaches had done that. And that was what catapulted my sales.
Yes. What exactly catapulted about them? Was it just, were you selling packages before you're working with us or did you start afterwards? Like what was the change, I guess?
I was selling packages. Okay. I kind of restructured a little bit how I sell the packages, but like I just was talking to someone today, like just like a few hours ago, we were finishing, I guess it was an eval, and just the way I spoke to the patient, like the format that I used to wrap up, how much time I kept for that, the way I talked them through the stages of their long-term goals and why my recommendation is the way it is. And the way I, before I even went into any sales process, just checked in with them about how it's feeling. It's like, it felt so natural. And like, I was partnering with them and like this person, like we ended up deciding together that for this particular person, once monthly is actually better for XYZ reasons. And like, we both felt really good about that. And it really felt like partnering and so natural. And it was just like literally having to learn it's a little bit of a different way. And I just feel like I could connect with people and it just all feels so much more genuine now.
That makes me so happy to hear because I mean, that's what it's supposed to be. It shouldn't feel like you're taking off your clinician hat and putting on your sales hat. It's all the same. And the way you described it, where they are coming up with the conclusion that together that this makes sense, like that's exactly how it's supposed to feel. I love that.
We don't learn that. I feel like I needed to be kind of, I don't want to say like hold my hand, but I needed to have have feedback on my sales calls and like go into like, why wasn't I asking certain questions? For example, like certain why questions. I didn't want to ask because I didn't want to be pushy, and like kind of work through that and practice it. And then it's like, the more you do it, the more fluid it becomes. I kind of needed someone to like catch me right in the moments that things started to fall apart and be like, right there, Marci. And I'm like, yeah, that doesn't feel right. You should have said this. Oh, okay. It's like, I just needed that, you know?
Yeah. Do you have a specific scenario that you went through that ended up being really good? You wouldn't mind sharing with folks so that they could try implementing it? Something that AJ taught you or you learned through the process?
Totally. Like, you know, I definitely learned about like getting to the patient's deeper why, right? Like, why is this important to you? Well, it hurts. Okay, well, what does it stop you from doing? It stops me from, you know, running. And there's always this feeling like I knew to ask why questions, but it just didn't feel like I really got to the heart of it, you know? So I remember this first time that I was like, well, why is running important to you? Like, what does that do for you? And just like, I literally had AJ, you know, who teaches sales, go into like asking kind of more open-ended, why, what, how, using those kind of words that kind of elicit more of an answer. And so I just did this with this one person. And I remember that when I did it, I was so scared, like my heart was beating, like it just felt different. And I felt like, kind of like, who am I to be like probing? Like I felt like I was probing them too hard. They loved it. And it just got to that feeling of like connection. Again, it was this connection, like, oh, so like this is really important to you because this is like how you hang out with your friends and like you love hanging out with that friend. And they were like, yeah, and like just feel so sad about that. And it's like, yeah. You just get to this, like, I don't remember exactly what it was, but that taught me like, yeah, I went out on a limb and kind of like did a little more questioning. I had to be put to do it. And again, it was like that just feeling of connection with my patient. And then it just all clicks. It's like, you do that, then they're like so much more likely to commit to you, commit to the whole plan of care. You understand them so much better. It just, you know, but that was one example of something that happened that I remember when I came out of that call, I was like, that was really good. Like it was scary. It was scared me somehow.
Yeah, it is scary because you think it's like everyone's had bad sales experiences where people probed when they didn't want to be probed. But it's such a different thing within profession when you're doing it from a place of like love and genuine care for someone, when you not only want to make sure that you understand what they're trying to do, but you also want to make sure that you're the right person to help them. And you can't do that unless you know exactly what it is that they're trying to do. Because maybe they're better off going to an in-network clinic based off of, you know, their why. So that is a challenging thing I think everyone hesitates with. I think the harder question, because I think a lot of people know they need to be asking these whys, they don't know how deep to go. And I'm not quizzing you, by the way, but how do you know when you found the right thing? Like when to transition away from finding their why?
I think you might agree with this, but for me, it's like, I feel it in my body.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When you connect with someone, you have this feeling of connection and you're like, yeah, it just feels like now we can move on. Like, so you're telling me that this matters to you because of this. And they're like, yeah, you really, you know, it's just a deeper understanding, I would say.
Right.
I also know the feeling of when I do those questionings and, you know, you say, okay, so this is, you repeat back, this is why it's important to you. And they say, yes, but there's this feeling deep inside, like, I didn't get it though. You know, that feeling where you're like, nah, I didn't go. So now I get to feel the differences.
So, and once you figure out, like, once you feel that connection with someone, you've built that bridge, where do you transition to out of that? Does it go right into, you know, let's get you scheduled, or what does that look like?
Oh, I do what you guys taught me. So I repeat back they said, I make sure that I got everything. I assure them that I can help them with that. And then I tell them that I'd love to tell them about the method. If they're, you know, I'm going to go talk about this now, kind of transitioning the conversation from you've been talking, but now I'm just going to tell you something about that. And let's look at the schedule and see when we can get you in, and just kind of like a set they're gonna book basically.
Yes. Beautiful. Beautiful. And how long do those calls normally take you when you structure it that way?
They can take about 20 minutes.
Yep.
They take longer. I haven't been doing that much lately. The admin has been doing all of those calls, but I could kind of tell, I don't know about what you think, but when I look at the call and it says it's 10 minutes, I'm like, yeah, that's not long enough. And I listen to it and there's like things that I feel like she could have asked. And so for me, sometimes they go, usually they're about 20 minutes, but I've had ones that go 25, 27, but a lot of times I get really complex people. So.
Right. And I think it's important going into that, like your job is not as the admin, or if you're the one doing the sales in your practice because you're solo, your job is not to take orders and just let people book. You're a consultant that protects the calendar. That means that no one, even if they just want to come in, gets to just come in. Like you have to make sure that they're the right fit, and that makes them feel heard, makes them way more bought into the process. Because so yeah, I totally agree. I think there's some times when calls can go a little bit shorter, but you're right. I think 20 is like the healthy amount of time to build a real connection and show them that, you know, your process can actually work for them.
And you know what I was going to add is I think that when I take the calls, and it's hard as a PT to not like wear your clinician hat. And so you end up talking a little bit, giving them a little more information, right? And so it's been really good to not take those calls, and they can get done in 20 minutes or sometimes 15 by the admin. And then when the patient starts asking more complex questions, the answer is like, you need to meet your practitioner and they will answer that for you. And like, it's really more appropriate, you know, and it's better to have that kind of separation from me. So I think that I've heard PTs say, even on calls, like, how could an admin take your calls? But I think that it's good because you'd end up not like oversharing and giving like turning it into a physical therapy session. It's very hard not to do that because you're like, I can give you some advice on that right now.
Yeah. All of a sudden you're cannibalizing yourself. They're worse off because they're not getting the outcome that they need. Yeah. And they're likely going to do something that's faster and easier, which isn't good for them in the long run, right?
Better I don't.
Yeah. So let's transition away from the first call. You talked a little bit about the evaluation, but what's changed that you've seen that you've implemented within just the system itself? Like, where do they go from the first call to the point where they're like deciding with you that, yeah, I need a package?
Right. So from the point of the first, I mean, it starts before the first call, right? It starts when there's a contact with us, right? And like having a system in place for how did this new lead come in? Are they a lead off marketing, or is this like a more of a like warm lead that came from the community? And then getting them contacted within a day, right? And then day 2 follow-up, day 3 follow-up if we can't get through to them, to scheduling a discovery call. So that all happens. They get the link to the discovery call, and then they do the discovery call. They book the evaluation. They get the welcome sequence. And then if everything goes well and I do everything I'm supposed to, they get a video welcome from me so they can see my face because they didn't actually meet me, right? Yeah. And then they get a text from me day of, looking forward to seeing you. They do the evaluation, they get a write-up after about what we found, and then I'm developing more workflows to kind of take them through the entire sequence, right? So they might get a midpoint check-in that's automated, and then they get discharged, although we're working on long-term, increasing their long-term value. But if they get discharged, they also get contacted from me again, regularly on an automation.
Yes. And did it take you long to get all that set up?
It kind of did.
Yeah. it takes, you got to do one piece at a time. Yeah.
But the fact that I could verbalize all that now is like a huge win for me.
Heck yeah. Now you got a whole mapped out patient experience and client journey that you can optimize piece by piece. And,
right.
And now that it's all set up and done, how much time are you spending following up with a lot of those past leads, discharged patients, and those folks?
None. It all gets done without having to think about it. No, like a text of thanks so much for checking in on me, Marci. I'm playing tennis. I'm like, oh, that's great. I didn't know I checked in.
Those are the best. Yeah, it's not always like, oh, I'm coming in, but you get so much appreciation from people that, you know, just are so thankful that you took the time to check in. They end up sending other people that they end up coming in like a month later because they're top of mind. Yeah, that's a beautiful system. So I'm glad that you got the whole thing set up now. And so once you had all this stuff plugged in, tell us what the growth rate looked like.
After I had everything in, what the growth rate looked like. It's hard to say because it still feels like it's kind of recent. And what has really grown things in a good way in the past 3 weeks, man, is those Facebook ads. Like that has blown up. Like I don't even know the effect of that yet because I have all these evals on my schedule now that are Facebook ads, and they're going to get these automations. So I think it's going to be amazing. I can't even report yet, but I can tell you that I was hoping to get like 5 leads a week from the Facebook ads, and it's more like 3 to 5 leads per day. It's crazy how well they're doing. And our admin yesterday had 5 discovery calls and she booked all 5. So So I just think I can't report the numbers to you yet because it's all like in process, but I like can't even wrap my head around it.
Yeah. The ads are fun, especially in pelvic health. It's kind of a cheat code. We got a really good process for that. But when you got in, you're sitting around, I don't know, I think you're around like 15. I know you hit the 20K mark and then things kind of like hit the fan. Can you tell us about that fan? Because I know you learned some extremely important lessons from this. It's going to make your much more scalable moving forward and make life a little bit more interesting. So tell us about it.
Yeah, well, I just learned a lot about hiring and hiring the right person. And I had another therapist here for 8 months, and that was amazing. And I was able to really spend time growing out the business more during that time. And then it turned out that that wasn't a cultural fit. So I'm so glad that that all came out in the open, and that now I get to really kind of buckle down and describe, or like kind of think for myself, well, what is the culture that I'm trying to create? And I think I got kind of lit up on that from going to the live event. And like, I need to actually have a better, more compelling mission, vision, and values, and like really verbalize the type of position that I'm creating for someone to come on in and what the mission is here. So someone can be like a really good fit and like really committed to growing the practice with me. So that's the positive side of it, and I think that it all worked out for the best.
I mean, we all have setbacks. They're inevitable. It's just the universe's way of turning us into the versions of ourselves we need to be to have the things that we want. And so I'm not perfect at this, but I think it's a blessing. I try to think of when things hit the fan for me, it's a blessing. I think you've already grown a ton from this. And so for the people watching, just like there's two pieces of information that we talked a lot about at the live event. Number one was that every single business has a culture, but very, very few businesses are actually intentional about that culture. And that if you think it's hard to find good PT talent to work in your practice, it's so much harder to find good management and find good culture where people are growing together and that they're all aligned with serving a mission. And if you don't have a strong mission in your practice that's verbalized and talked about and revisited regularly, your staff and your team, if they're not aligned in service of a mission, their mission is to serve themselves. And so we have to be talking about what it is that we're trying to accomplish outside of just returning active adults to their favorite activities. It has to be deeper than that. It has to be measurable. So tell us about, when you first heard that, like, what did it feel like? And what things are you starting to take action on now to try to grow and expand on what you learned?
Yeah, I was thinking a lot about core values. And I think I heard this in live where it's like having core values of like integrity and communication are like not good enough. Like every business has those core values. And I started really thinking about like, no, I have to go deeper. Like, what are the values that are really make this practice different? And I came up with like two main ones. I mean, there's more, but I would say like one is that I feel so passionate about is balance, because so many PTs don't have that. And I personally was at a place a few years ago where like I was considering walking away from a profession I feel so passionate about because I was giving more than I was, receiving. I was just so exhausted by it that I felt like I couldn't do it anymore. So like I have balance. I work 3 days a week. I have 15 minutes between patients, and like I need that to feel like I could do this interview right now. I worked all day. I don't feel tired. I feel energized. Like I feel great. And like this was not the case when I worked in an insurance-based clinic. So that's one that I just feel like I'm so fortunate that I can give that to another physical therapist now who could join the team. And then the other one that I feel like makes me different or makes this company different, for me, it's expression. It's being able to express who I am and how I want to treat without someone telling me how to do it. And that's very individual. And I felt that it was so squashed in the clinic, So like, I'll give you an example. I was doing pelvic health. So if someone wanted to talk about something that came up, I couldn't talk about it because wait, we're talking about the trauma that you experienced, but this is just talking. Like I have to be doing something while we're talking because now I can't bill for it. And if I don't bill for it, I'm not going to get my units. If I don't get my units, they're going to be like riding my butt about that. You know what I mean? Like I just couldn't practice the way I wanted.
Yeah.
Just I had a patient on this table right here in a treatment room. and you were doing this work, and she stops and she says, this is bringing up this, that, and that for me. And I just stopped and I said, that's great. That's just your body expressing, your body wants to express it, and we need to bring it to the surface. And she says, I don't normally do this. I'm like, right, you normally dissociate, right? And she's like, right, like I just push it down. So, and I'm like, exactly. So that's what we don't do here. We stop, we just talk. She processed. And then after, she said, I'm ready to keep going. And it really felt like what I call like a sovereign yes and consent, which is so important in this type of work. And like, I couldn't do that in an insurance-based clinic. Like, there wasn't enough time, that wasn't billable time, like to talk about connection with my patients. And like, I wasn't expressed in like how Marci would handle this situation. I couldn't do. So that's what I feel so passionate that like PTs, like we're all healers in our own way and need to just like practice, have the freedom to practice in a way that feels like intuitive and right to us and not what's right for insurance.
And feel okay with it too, to like slow things down, make sure that they feel comfortable. And if that means like stopping and just spending that session, kind of talking them through some of the things that they've been through and making them feel comfortable. I mean, although you might not get what you wanted done in that session, like what you've done for that person emotionally to help open them up to receive the care and help that they need because you took the time to do that is magical. And I think, that's what's going to transform the physical therapy space. People like you taking stances like that. So I think that's amazing.
And I would say that treating that way does make them better. It would be surprising. She still got her treatment. Like, we just talked for a little bit, but if all you do is talk, those people come back, they feel better, they do feel better. And then sometimes they come in here and they're like, my last pelvic PT was terrible. It hurt the whole time. I'm like, it hurt the whole time. They just kept doing it. Yeah, they just kept doing it. It's like, well, that's not how we do it here.
Yeah, it's almost like when I'm coaching and I'm trying to motivate people to think bigger, to think like you are capable of building a $50,000 a month practice. And you are capable of helping, 400 plus people a month if you want to. But a lot of them, they all have like their own internal fears and conflicts where they feel like they don't actually deserve those things. And so there's a whole lot of internal work that needs to happen before the external environment around us can change in the way that we want it to. So it's crazy to me that so little is actually talked about in healthcare, at least with physical therapy, where we're not treating the mind of a lot of our patients in some cases.
I know. That's why this model is like, why I'm not burnt out, because it's like I could connect with the people in the way that I want to. Like, this is why I chose this field in the first place. Like, this is what makes it fun, is to really connect with people. And we're in an environment now that I can. It's like a joy.
Yeah, they're lucky to have you. You're a joy just to talk to. So I can only imagine how calming you are when you're actually in your zone of genius with your patients.
I was going to say, it's funny because that's what the patient said. She was right here and she was crying. And I was like, are you okay? And she's like, it's joy. And I was like, interesting. That's good.
It's so it's amazing that you can have that and share that with your patients. So I know everyone watching this, they want to have more magical moments and build stronger connections with their patients. They want to build more and more of those connections. So I guess out of all the things that you've learned, what is the single most valuable piece that you've learned that you'd like to share with anyone who might be watching this? Any primary takeaways from your journey that you wish you would have been told when you were getting started?
I just think pain is growth. It's painful to grow. You know what I mean? Like, but that means that you're really big and like leading the life that you really want to live. Like, I feel so good about the choices that I've made. And I feel like even if I fail, and I know I won't, but I know I tried, you know what I mean? And so it's like, you're going to do something big and scary. That's awesome. You should. You will fail and it will hurt and you'll be better for it. You know what I mean? Do you agree with that? That's like, I just think,
preaching to the choir. I gave the first keynote I ever gave at an event was on being anti-fragile and allowing the things that break you to make you better and stronger. Yeah. So I'm like the biggest advocate for that kind of mindset and thinking. So glad to hear that you are too. So basically the advice is things are going to go wrong. Things are going to be hard, and they're supposed to be hard. And you shouldn't avoid the pain. You should lean into it because that is God, the universe, giving you exactly what you asked for, giving you the pressure that's going to turn you into and give you the things that you want.
Yeah, it's almost absolutely. It's like we need to do the same thing for ourselves that we do for our clients, right? Like, what is your goal? Like, where do you see yourself? How does that feel? Like, let's get you there one step at a time. Is it going to hurt? Yes. Are you going to be sore? Yes. let's keep going anyway, you know, like that.
Right. So true. It helps to have a community to help you through that stuff, because I mean, I know you've had some help and you've had some people around you, but no matter what, building a business when it truly does rest on you is a pretty lonely and challenging road. And so it sounds like you've been a part of coaching programs and masterminds long before you got into clinical marketer. Tell me, the people who are watching this week, we obviously have a big promotion going on to fill this roster of people in the book program. Tell them any advice that you have for these individuals who are on the fence. What working with us and our team has helped you do in your journey and helping you kind of get through the challenges that you've been facing?
You guys provide a supportive environment. And unlike other coaching that I've done, you guys are a team, right? So if you're looking at a coach and it's like one person, you're relying on that one person to like teach you all the things. And I look back and think that's what makes this so different, because it's like one person is really good at sales. And then there's another person who goes through systems with you. And there's another person who goes through Facebook ads with you. And there's another person who designs your website. It's like everyone has their place. It's like a beautiful, it's like a system, like exactly like the system I'm trying to build, right? It's like you're part of this team, and it's a really great energy. I feel like being a part of your team, and I never felt this so much before, but it teaches me what type of culture I want to create, because I love how I'm treated by you, and I want to treat people that way, you know? And you say like, oh, I remember when I was like 30K in 3 months, like, what? Like, I don't know. I don't know. Telling you guys, like, and if you don't make it in 3 months, we'll stick with you until you do. It almost sounds like too good to be true. So it kind of felt like a leap of faith for me to get in the business. So like 4 months in, like, it's true. Like, I'm not at 30K yet, but I know that I'm going to get there. I have no doubt that I'm going to get there. And like, there's no other program that does like all of it well, like the systems really well and the sales well, and they help you with this and that, you know? So that's what I say.
Appreciate that. Appreciate that. And you've been a pleasure to work with. You dropped a lot of values. The systems part, I don't think we've had anyone jump on here and break down exactly what our new patient onboarding and kind of what our eval process looks like as descriptively as you did. So if you're just jumping on and you haven't watched that, definitely make sure you go back, rewatch that, take notes, and implement what Marci broke down for you, because that is honestly the key. If you're bad at sales, it's not because you're bad at sales, it's because your systems suck. And that person has already decided before they show up, they're not going to commit to a package. Even if you do great on that eval, really hard to get people to change their mind. That's when they have to talk to their spouse. Go back, watch that. Everyone here, please thank Marci. She had a long day, had a patient that ran late, made sure that she got here on time to be able to share her value with each and every one of you and share her experience. So make sure that we thank her. Marci, thank you so much for being here. It's been fun talking with you. I will definitely get you in here again once we get that new team member on board and get you ramped up, hitting those multiple 5-figure months again.
I look forward to it. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Later, everybody.
Bye.
Yay.